one and all, back to the Ultimate Hockey Show. I'm just checking. Yeah, everybody can hear me. I can hear myself now. Welcome to the Ultimate Hockey Show. My name is Michael Dill, joined by Rick Petty. Good evening, Rick. How are you?
Very good, Michael. How about you?
Good. I think we should clarify those that may have missed our note why we had no show last week. I was under the weather. So we had planned to do the show on Monday, planned to do it Tuesday, and I still wasn't feeling the best. Still, I'm not feeling the best. Getting better, but not as bad as it was last week. Um, I have a sinus infection, but just won't seem to want to go away. But that's the way it goes. So that's why we're on today. Red Boy had the game changed in the 2 weeks that we've been gone. It was like a trade deadline happened. The Winnipeg Jets cannot stop winning. To be honest, I don't think they lost a game while we were gone. Maybe the first one. Um,
Yeah.
the NHL, excuse me, had some salary cap news for the next couple weeks or next couple years. How does that affect the Jets? Um, New teams in playoff races. How does that shift the balance of power? Plus, I have some thoughts on what the Winnipeg Jets should do at the trade deadline with a predominant player set to become a free agent. That is what we have on tap. Plus, anything that's on Rick's mind. Um, I'll open this up with a basic question before we talk about the Winnipeg Jets since our last show. Um, and that is,
Yeah.
what have you thought about the sport of hockey in the last 2 weeks?
Uh, you know what? It's been good. I don't know. It's actually really good because I think the play has gotten better. I just think it starts to ramp up. It's getting to the break. There's only about 30, 35 games left for most
Yep.
teams. Maybe not more than not even 35. I think it's like 30 anywhere from was it even less than 30, maybe 27 to 30 games left for most teams, kind of in that range. So teams are getting ramped up. I think a lot of teams are talking about the Four Nations Cup. The players are talking about, in fact, guys on their own teams. So it's kind of funny. They were talking with the Florida Panthers, and Barkov from Finland is talking about how Kachuk is going to play against him when they play against each other in the Four Nations Cup, and their teammates in the Panthers says, yeah, I think he's going to come with a little bit of physicality. I said, I guess so. You better be ready for it. So, but it's kind of funny because you just go, like, you have your pals, right? Your guys that you're fighting all the way through all season to get to the cup. Like, you're driving, you've got this bond of, band of brothers and everything else. And then you drop that for 2 weeks in the middle of the season, and then you go into opposite teams. It'd be like being in a war and you're at each other's throats for a year, and then you just decide to scramble everybody up and put everybody on separate sides and now keep going at it again. Like, it's kind of strange, right? And then 2 weeks after that, you go back to your band of brothers that you were with before. Now, it's not a big deal if you're a guy who's not made one of the Four Nations teams. That's fine. But guys like, I don't know, you want to make your Morrissey against Connor, right? How hard is Morrissey going to crank Kyle Connor in the corner if he's got his head down going for a puck? Is he going to drop him? Yeah, I don't think so, because these guys like each other. They're friends, right? They're on the same team. What happens if Josh Morrissey gives Kyle Connor a concussion and puts him out for a month? I don't think that's going to happen. But you never know with guys. Certain guys, they go funny when you start to play for your nation. It's the same thing with Alexander Barkov. If I was playing against the Americans, I'd keep my head up for those Kachuk boys. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
know what's going to happen.
That kind of leads into another question that I had, and we can kind of talk about.
Yep.
My thought was kind of talking about hockey, sort of the last 2 weeks. Then next week we come back. We talked about the last two Jet games and preview the Four Nations.
Yep.
So next week's show will lead into the Four Nations, which begins a week from Wednesday with Canada versus Sweden, I think it is. But
Right.
we'll talk about that. That's sweet, but I did want to ask this question sort of on the premise of the Four Nations, and that is, do you feel that players will be taking this seriously? Because we heard a saying from me, a saying, well, we heard taught from the NHL that the all-star rules, quote unquote, apply. If a player misses the game before the all-star game, he gets suspended a game, and he's got a very valid reason. Um, are we? Do you worry about the players taking this event seriously?
Oh, I think they're going to take it seriously. Some of these guys, see, that's the thing. Like, you got guys like Crosby and Marchand. I mean, they've played for Canada before, and it's, you know, I mean, they still like playing for Canada, and it's all good. Like, I'm not saying they're not going to get geeked up, but you got guys like, look at McDavid and McKinnon, and I don't know, pick your other team, the Kachuk boys. Like, there's been no Olympics for them, right? There's been
Right.
there's been no Canada Cup. There's been um, no big international thing other than the world, or other than the World Championships, which happen every spring for the teams or the players for teams that will not make the playoffs. That's fine, but it's good, but it's not the same thing. So this is sort of the elite, the best on the best. Whatever. There hasn't been something like this for McDavid, for McKinnon, for the Kachuk boys, for, you name your player, Josh Morrissey, Connor Hellebuck. So I think they're going to be pretty excited about it. I think they're going to play pretty geeked up, but at the same time, I agree with you. I just think it's not going to be the all-star game. It's not going to be this just skating around and nobody hitting anybody. There's going to be hitting, but I just can't see guys on the same team cranking each other. Now, just hypothetically, would Brady Kachuk crank and Brady Kachuk is on a line with Kyle Connor? Would Brady Kachuk go into the corner and crank Josh Morrissey if he's got the puck? He probably would. So I think it's going to happen. Guys have to be smart, but I think there's something, I've never played for my country, but I hear it's just something really exciting. And especially when you get the fans behind it, you get the excitement of it. It's something else. And I think the games are going to be good. But I agree with you. It's hard to figure out, it's not going to be an all-star game, kind of just skating around and nobody hitting anything, but is it going to be the same level of intensity as a regular season game or even as a first round of the playoffs game? That I'm not sure of. That's a really good question. That's a really good question.
And the other benefit is, but I think we haven't calculated into this, is how do the players not going to the Four Nations Cup come out of this Four Nations tournament? Like the Leon Draisaitl, who's German, the Russian and the Belarusian players who aren't in this tournament because, well, it's only Four Nations, right? So it's, how does that work, right? And last I saw, Washington was one of the only teams that didn't have anybody participating in this tournament, which I find is absolutely wild.
Yep.
But it is a statistical fact. So we'll have more on the Four Nations Cup next week when we talked about the last two Jets games and let's head to the Four Nations tournament. I just did a quick one to see. Let's just do some comments here. Rob says you'd want a 15 player to take the tournament just to play for the respective countries as opposed to their individual NHL teams. Yeah, I think there's something to be said about that, right? I mean,
Michael, your sound is kind of wobbly.
Yep, and then I'm gonna just give me 1 second here. I'm gonna. Oops. How's this bit better?
Way better.
Okay,
Thank
hold on one second here. I'm just gonna get my volume cranked up so I can hear you.
you.
Okay, how's that? Better?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just gonna have to do a really good job of listening here because the sound output isn't great on this computer. Um, but that being said, yeah, I was just going through. Just going through Rob's comment. You'd think these players would want to take this tournament seriously because they're playing for their respective countries as opposed to their individual NHL teams. As I was saying, I think we do have a little bit of precedent in this, Rick, in the form of the World Juniors, right? I mean, the World Juniors people leave their respective junior teams to join their country and they play for teammates, on different countries and that happens. And granted, the World Championship is in April or May, pardon me. So that's outside of the NHL calendar, but I think there's going to be a lot of national pride on the line in this tournament.
I think so too. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, I was just looking at the schedule. Do you know, is Monday, February the 17th, is that a national holiday in the
Yeah,
States?
that's Louis Riel Day, Family Day.
Here.
Yep.
Yeah. But in the States, is it something too?
Yeah, it's what is it in the States? Hang on, I didn't look it up. I know why you're asking that because Canada has their
They play at 1 o'clock.
yeah, at noon Central Time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very interesting that way. Um, oh, man, my hearing aid
It's
is
okay.
relatively headed again. Um, no, I mean in general, I think it's going to be a good tournament. The last time that you and I got together, we were talking before the Utah game, and that happens to be the last loss that the Winnipeg Jets had on their calendar. Um, which quite honestly was when Stoddard Neal had that meltdown, and he said, "Oh, we were." Paraphrasing, we weren't ready to play. That was the worst of the season. It was embarrassing. That's
Yeah.
on me. This is not Winnipeg Jets hockey. And again, I'm paraphrasing. We all remember that because it was quotes plastered all over the local newspapers for the next 2 days between games.
Yeah.
Um, but since then, the Winnipeg Jets have won a whole bunch in a row, including a big overtime in Denver, wins over Utah and Calgary, wins over Montreal, Boston, and Washington. Um, the first and the last game of this current winning streak so far are in overtime. The middle four are in regulation 5-2, 5-2, 4-1, and 6-2. And Rhett, I think this is eerily reminiscent of the 14-1 start that the Winnipeg Jets got off to,
Yeah.
and playing a lot the same way. One of the big stories, of course, is Mason Appleton back in the lineup. The injury to Adam Lowry has since been front and center. My memory is terrible from a standpoint, but I can't remember which game Lowry ended up hurting himself in. I think it may have been the Utah game at home, if I'm not mistaken. I know he did come on the road trip, but as a friendly face, I think, with the words of the coaching staff.
Yeah. No, he didn't play. He didn't play in Utah. He hurt himself in the Colorado win at
Oh
Colorado.
yes. With the Colorado game, he finished that game. Um,
Well, he
the other
played the
one
game, but I don't.
interesting part
He played
was
that game. He played that game, but he didn't play in the third period. And
right,
since that time, Rasmus Kapari has been on that
right.
centering that line and has looked really, really good. I think he's it's not
Right,
like
and then the other one that I'm thinking of is Morgan Barron delivering that crushing hit to I think it's Jake Evans in Montreal, but Barron actually ended up getting the worst of that hit, even though he was the one that delivered the hit.
yeah.
Um, there has been some there has been some confirmation in recent days that there is belief that that is the play in which Morgan Barron hurt himself. Enter Parker Ford into the lineup.
Yeah.
Um, Listen, Rhett, it's I don't know how you describe this, but to me, it's just been smooth sailing, fun to watch, nerve wracking at times, but this stretch has cemented to me that these aren't the Winnipeg Jets of 2 3 years ago. Heck, these aren't even the Winnipeg Jets of last year. Um, but went into this January swoon, which has not happened. We'll see how the next 2 games go prior
Yeah.
to the break. But whatever swoon they went in coincided with that long road trip, Pittsburgh, Nashville, all kinds of crazy time zones. But since then, it's been a pretty good run of what we saw earlier on in the season. So, what have you seen from the Jets as a whole?
Oh, I agree with you. It's I think this is a different team from a year ago. I know it's a lot of the same players, but maybe it's maturity. Maybe it's, you need to, that old cliche, you need to lose once when you're a good team in order to figure out how to win all the time, even when you're not playing well or when you're not expected to win. So, after having such a great year last year and then meeting like playing so well against Colorado all year long and the season sweeping them, and then you meet them in the first round of the playoffs, win the first game in a shootout. You might have even lost that one if the game hadn't ended after 60
Well,
minutes.
if the game was 10 minutes longer, they lose that game. That's my feeling.
It's possible. It's possible. But anyway, then they lose 4 straight to Colorado. And you figure, like, well, what's going on with this team? And then they don't make any huge additions in terms of trades or signings. They lose Tyler Toffoli, which they didn't really want to sign anyway. They tried to sign Sean Monahan. He ended up going to the Blue Jackets. And then otherwise, it was all a promotion from within and just bringing up some of their younger players and providing them opportunities to play. I think another one is giving Vladislav Nemestikov the chance to be that second line center. I mean, every year we talk about, we got to find a second line center. We got to find a second line center. Well, you know what? Maybe they found one. Maybe they don't need anybody else. Maybe the Jets, their best thing at the trade deadline is not to trade away the future. They've got tons of depth already. They're showing it by losing people like Ehlers, Lowry, Samberg, Barron, Appleton. Like, they've lost cogs in the wheel and they've just kept on rolling along. So maybe, I'm not saying they should, but I just don't like this, trading away for a UFA, trading away a first round draft pick to get a first line center in. And then you don't win the Stanley Cup, and now you've lost that first round pick. Like, the Jets don't get picks all the time because they don't get the chance to sign free agents, because a lot of free agents don't want to play here, especially some, the high end players necessarily.
Yeah.
That may be changed. So all that to say, you got to hang on to your first round draft. So in my mind, unless you can come up with some great thing, or you lose somebody, like you lose Josh Morrissey, let's say, to injury, or Mark Scheifele, and you have to go out and you have to do something, maybe you just leave what you've got and you roll with what you've got, because you have the depth and those are your guys, and you play, and let them all come after you. I just saw now, this is unbelievable. The Jets are by far, they have the best winning percentage. They have the best goals against average per game. They have outscored every other team 4 goals against by more than 30 goals. Like, there's nobody close. And yet the Jets are ranked third in the power rankings.
Yeah.
Dallas is ranked ahead of them, and Dallas is behind them in the standings. Like, okay. But it's going to be good because tomorrow night the Jets are hosting Carolina, who is ranked ahead of them in the power rankings. So that will be a good test for the Jets to see how do they make and the Jets are not even fully loaded because they don't have Lowry. They don't have Morgan Barron, but it'll be interesting to see how they play over the next pair of games, because then after that, they go on hiatus for, 2 weeks until they come back on the road at St. Louis there on Hockey Night in Canada on February the 22nd. So, it'll be very, very interesting for the next couple of games. But I don't, to answer your question, you know what? The Jets are a very mature team. They don't get rattled. I mean, all teams get rattled, I guess, a little bit. You can play a little bit, if you're up by a goal in the third period, you can play a little bit more defensive minded, and then you're getting more of the other team attacking you. But they're very good at sheltering the puck, keeping it on the outside. Hellebuck makes the saves that he sees. They push the puck out, and they seem to really be managing it well. They score enough goals to win. I mean, they're the number one offense in the league. They've got the best power play. Everybody talks about Edmonton's power play and Edmonton's offense. Well, look at the Jets. They're outscoring the Oilers by a landslide. Their power play is way better than the Oilers. So I don't know. Like the Jets, they just don't get respect. You know what's going to happen? The Jets are going to win the Stanley Cup. I'm just saying this would happen. It's sort of, the Jets are going to win the Stanley Cup in the spring, let's say, and they're going to beat Washington or the Panthers, and Paul Maurice is going to say, I'm sad that we lost, but I'm happy it's the Jets, and Winnipeg, Winnipeg fans, yada, yada, yada. And the headline the next day is Oilers and Leafs don't fulfill promise in 2025. Jets end up with Stanley Cup. That sounds good, because the Jets, they don't get respect. Yeah. They're going to win the Stanley Cup, and they're still going to be, they fluked. Yeah, okay. I don't mind. You know what? If you call it a fluke, if they win the Stanley Cup, go ahead. Call it a fluke. I don't care.
Here's what I keep coming back to, and I was reminded by something that Coach Bowness said right before he left, or in recent months. I was having this discussion with somebody who said, maybe the Jets' best addition, and this is tongue-in-cheek, but maybe not necessarily, was maybe their best addition or signing has been assistant coach Davis Payne, who's responsible for running the power play, which has become from 22nd to mere historic proportions. I think they're a percentage point and a half better than the Oilers at, the all-time best, running power play, at least as of, earlier last week. But again, and it's something that Coach Bowness said too. He said, somebody said it way back when and last year, and you and I have discussed this point, ad nauseum. But if we would have had a top 10 power play last year, they'd probably win the President's Trophy. So maybe putting 2 and 2 together and improve power play, this is no accident, right? And, the other thing that was kind of pointed out to me by, somebody else in another market is there has to be something said about the cohesiveness that the Winnipeg Jets have by and large relative to teams around them. And I think you and I have discussed this a time or two as well. Like, and the comparison that this guy made was, Nashville, where, you bring in Stamkos, you bring in the defenseman from Carolina, now you bring in Marcia Show, and just how different your forward group / your defense looks relative to the Jets, where they made these changes around the edge. But yes, by and large, their team remains the same from the first, 60% of last year. All of the guys that they retained at the trade deadline were moved from a scenario they were pretty good at the deadline last year prior to bringing in, Sean Monahan and Tyler Toffoli. You
Yeah.
take those two by and large out of the lineup, their situation is pretty much the same, up front and the back end. And you and I have discussed this too, the emergence of Dylan Sandberg as a clear,
Yeah.
top four defenseman, the growth from within, what we're seeing from Shifley and Connor. I think you've already touched on that, earlier in the show, a first line. Knock on wood here. I'm going to knock on my table. Gabriel Velarde being healthy for a full 82. We're starting to see, what a fully healthy Gabriel Velarde can do, not just when Velarde's healthy, what he can do.
Yeah.
So it's just been interesting now. And all of a sudden in the last two games, which I think have been, the top line's worst two games in recent memory when it comes to that line, the second line has suddenly found some offense, which is interesting to see with Nemestikov,
Yeah.
Ehlers and Perfetti in particular. He had a hat trick and he had another goal in Washington. Boy, that's very, very encouraging. All of a sudden, it's like the second line that's been a black hole in Winnipeg, for lack of a better term, for as long as we can remember, now is starting to show some promise. And, the growth within, even from a guy like Rasmus Kupari, I'm sure you touched that already.
Yeah.
It's just been night and day different. And Parker Ford, who, yes, I've talked to some people in hockey circles just that I happened to meet at the rink, including a direct that you know very well. I'm sure you know who I'm talking about. But he also mentioned too to me that the growth from within also needs to be accounted for, and these guys that come up from the Moose, they're put in scenarios to have immediate success. See Parker Ford as an example, Nikita Chibrikov as an example, although since our last show, Chibrikov has suffered an injury to end his season, unfortunately. So that's the way it goes. That's the way it goes right now with injuries. But yeah, long and short of it is there's a lot of things that are contributing to where we are today, and I'm very happy. But you and I have cautiously said this team is going to be judged third week of April onward. Realistically, what would you view as a success this season? I mean, obviously, the Jets, it would be nice to win the Stanley Cup, that kind of thing. But realistically, what would you say with this season being a success? Like, hypothetically speaking, I could look at, Jets finishing first in the Central or playing a wildcard team. Is it an appearance in the second round, third round? A very hard-fought first round, but they lose. Like, outside of winning the Stanley Cup, what would you deem to be a success?
Yeah, that's a good question, Michael. It's a good question because last year, they lost in 5 to Colorado, but you could argue, and I would argue, I would say those 5 games that they played against Colorado you could argue were the worst 5 games they played all last year. So why, like, even the one they won, it was a shootout. There was no defense, there was no structure. It was just they couldn't keep up with Colorado. They couldn't maintain speed. Hellebuck couldn't stop a beach ball. It was all of the above. They were just terrible. Their power play stank. Their penalty killing was terrible. They couldn't get any offensive zone time 5-on-5. Hellebuck couldn't stop a puck. They couldn't skate with Colorado. They couldn't slow them down. It was just awful. And even the first game that they won, it was like whatever that was, 7-5 or 6-4 or 8-6. I'm not sure, it was some big shootout. It was nuts. They were up by a bunch of goals, and then Colorado came back and scored a bunch of goals. So all that to say, I agree with you. They're going to be judged on what they do this spring. And for me personally, you know what? Listen, if the Jets win the Stanley Cup, I know you'd like to see the Leafs win too. But for me, being a Winnipeg guy, remembering the AFCO Cup days as a kid, if the Jets won the Stanley Cup, I mean, that would be something. Being the first Canadian team in almost 30 years or 40 years to win, I guess it'd be 30 plus 31 or 32 years. I think it was 93. The Habs were the last team, I think, the Canadian team to win. So, but anyway, you think 30 plus years and the Jets are the next team to do it. I mean, that would be incredible. It'd be an incredible story. I mean, the city would be nuts. It'd be great. But you know what? It may not happen. It probably will not happen. So, to your point, what is a good thing for the Jets? They have to play like they've played all year. So if the Jets play like they've played all year and the playoffs gets a little bit tougher, that first line needs to be a driving offensive line and generates goals in the power play. The second line, it's not going to be a grinder line. That's a speed line. If they all stay healthy, Nemestikov, Ehlers, and Perfetti are going to have to find ways to use their speed during the playoffs to get chances like they're getting now and to avoid the hitting and to avoid getting cranked and all those things and go to the hard areas even when they're hard to get to. The third line will be Adam Lowry's line and the fourth line will be the check. That's all great. So if the Jets stay like that and Hellebuyck plays well, maybe they get through the first round, the second round, maybe they get like last time, they get to the conference finals and they lose in 6 games or 7 games, but they're close games and they're in the games. And it just happens to be, the other goalie's on fire and a shot goes in off of a skate and they lose in the 7th game or 6th game 2-1 and they lose the series 4-2 or 4. I mean, is that a horrible year? I don't think it's a horrible year. I think it's okay. I just think if the Jets go out in the first round and playing like they did last year, like just being completely dominated and they're a completely different team playing a completely different structure like they were last time, that can't happen 2 years in a row. If it does, they have to make changes because they can't go on like that. That's not going to work. So, but I don't think they're the same team. I think they are not the same team they were last year. They're more mature. They don't have these high ups and high downs. I just think they're able to weather the storm as long as they stay healthy and Hellebuyck plays a little bit more relaxed and not so uptight. I think they're going to be okay. Now, whether they win the Stanley Cup or not, that's a good question. But as long as they're in a series and don't get hammered like they did against Colorado. Like they were the favored ones and they got hammered by Colorado, especially those last 3 games. I mean, the Jets weren't even in those games. They were just skating around like for fun, it looked like.
Yeah, I just think it's very interesting, right? Because I've been to, and you and I have talked about this for a long time. In fact, we've talked about this ad nauseum, and that is the Winnipeg Jets are going to be judged by what they do in the middle of April, and this is April 19th onward. There's no answer buts. Like, I don't have any question about this team in the regular season. My question is, when the going gets difficult, how do they respond? And we're starting to see. Thank you. We're starting to see clearly. We're starting to see clearly that. We're starting to see clearly, but at least for right now, this team is different. And one thing that kind of strikes me is when they went out against Colorado, they said, but then I'm paraphrasing, everybody needs to look at themselves in the mirror. Internally, we need to be better. And to a man, they've done that so far. But the proof will always be in the playoffs. And I maintain this. If the Jets want to put themselves over the top, they need a forward and a defenseman to play with Josh Morrissey. I watched that game against Washington back in the 3rd period. For some reason, it seemed like DeMello and Morrissey were being dummied around in the 3rd period. Now, excuse me, you can argue that, the line deployment, if you want to have that argument, sure, I'm here for it, but I still feel like they need a defenseman and a forward, and it was floated to me via text message today or yesterday amongst my hockey talking people. What about going to St. Louis in a night and day scenario, probably dreamland, getting Braden Shen and Colton Parayko?
For what?
Well,
You know what you're going to have to give up?
that was my question back in his
Well,
group.
Parayko, you're going to have to give up a first-round draft choice and probably a high-end prospect.
But is that a trade you're willing to make given where this team is at right now?
Okay, but see, there's another side, and we can talk about this. I know we haven't chatted about anything else other than Jets, but that's fine. That's because that's our hometown. There's this part of me that says, yeah, you want to help the team. You want to help the team. You want to show the guys that you believe in them. But isn't there a part of believing in the team to say, we like the guys we have? All year, as guys have gotten injured or guys have gotten sick or whatever it is, we've plugged in other guys and we haven't missed a beat. We've moved guys around. We've still scored goals. We've still played our system. We've still played well defensively. Sure, they'd like to have Adam Lowry in the lineup versus not having him in the lineup. Sure, they would have not liked to have lost Sandberg there for that stretch. I think their winning percentage dropped by about 20, 25 points, not having him in the lineup. He's a huge part of their success. But I'm just saying, maybe there's something, if you don't trade away a first round, a third round pick, and a prospect, like I don't know who you would think of trading away to get Colton Parayko and Braden Shen to come in, and then they don't want to stay and they go sign somewhere else. You lose but what does that say to the team? It says the two guys that are in those roles now, we don't believe in you. So you head over to the press box. So I'm just saying there's a downside to going at the trade deadline and bringing in all these guys, because you're in essence saying, we don't believe in the group we have, so we think we're going to upgrade by bringing in these guys. Well, you could say, well, part of it is, we're showing that we believe in the guys. Maybe you're showing that you don't believe in them, because all the guys that have stepped in when you've required them throughout the year through injuries and illness and whatever, now you say, on second thought, even though you've done such a good job all year filling in and the lineup has changed, but yet we've still kept on rolling, we really don't believe it's enough. Now we're going to do something extra special for the playoffs. Some people say that's a great idea. Maybe it's not a great idea. Maybe it sends the wrong note to your team. I don't know. I'm just saying, who are you going to get? What are you going to give up? They've given up first-round draft choices for Sean Monahan. Goodbye. They've traded away. They've gotten some back, but they've traded away. I don't even know. Have they got a first-round draft choice this year? I don't think so. Isn't that the Monahan trade was a first-rounder in 2025?
Sorry?
Isn't like the Sean Monahan trade from last year? Wasn't that a first rounder in 2020?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Well, they don't even have a first round draft choice for this year. So I'm just saying, now you get trade away another guy. You know what? I have this feeling the Jets are not going to do anything. I think they like their team. Their young guys have stepped up. Look at Logan Stanley. All this talk about, you know what? Logan Stanley, he's played pretty good the last 2 weeks to a month.
Yeah, it's all been quiet on front for sure.
Now he plays in the third pairing, but he plays with the right guy. You play him. Maybe Heinola is not the right pairing with him, but you play him with Miller or you play him with Fleury, somebody a little bit stronger and tougher, and then him and has the right-handed shot on the other side. Logan Stanley's played very, very well. Kills penalties. He hasn't taken a lot of silly penalties the last year or the last few months or last month or whatever it is. So look at that. A guy steps in. Now, we need a big, tough defenseman to replace Brendan Dillon. Yeah, we got one. Logan Stanley. We need a second-line center to play with Ehlers and Perfetti. Yeah, we got one in Nemestikov. So you're going to trade away your future to bring in some guys. Maybe they don't fit in. Maybe they don't like the system. Look at all the logistics in Vancouver. Speaking of something else going to look at in Vancouver. Two guys, the two top players on your team, making the most amount of money, more than Hughes, 1 and 2 are Pettersson and Miller, and they can't get along. For what?
Yeah.
That's a strange one. To me, there's something funny there. Because to me, the only thing that could be is that one guy had an affair with the other guy's wife, or one guy made a pass at another guy's wife, or something. Like what is it that causes two guys you can't get along? And you've got a team that played well. You were in a playoff position, one of the very best teams in the league last year, and now all of a sudden you can't get along. Each of you making your $9-10 million a year. Please, yeah. What is it? What is it? You don't like how he looks at you? You don't like how he yells at you when you cough up the puck in your own end and you cause a goal? JT Miller's an intense guy. I would have a hard time playing with him. I'm a little bit like that too. But that kind of guy, you need guys like that to push other guys. Maybe guys are a little bit scared. Maybe Pedersen gets a little bit, oh, I don't like it when he calls me out, when he tells me that I'm playing too soft or I gave up the puck too easily on that one goal, and that's why we lost 3-2. Like, yeah, suck it up, Buttercup. You make $10 million, $11 million a year. You're supposed to be the number one player in your team. Play better. So that's what I'm saying. So all that logistics, you got all that politics for two guys that are superstars on your team. And now the Jets, you say, well, now we're going to bring somebody in. Is he going to fit in? Is he going to play the style of the Jets? Can he skate? Is he going to be able to fit? I don't know. These are all big questions. And you're going to toss a first-round draft choice into the wind for that? And you might not, probably won't even get him signed if he's a UFA. Have the Jets ever signed a guy that they traded for in the first round for a first-round draft pick? The only guy that they signed was Paul Stastny, right?
Right. Again, that's for
right. They couldn't sign Monahan. They couldn't sign Hayes. They couldn't sign.
Wasn't Stastny on a second return too?
Yeah, but they signed him after he was gone. He came back. They signed as a UFA. So that one was, they were able to get him. But they've lost a couple of first rounders because they couldn't sign these centermen after they traded.
And again, it's gotten them really nothing in the playoffs as far as significant.
Yeah.
But again, that's a very interesting discussion. Quickly, Rick, we've almost taken the whole show up talking about the Jets here in the last 2 weeks. Want to hit you on some quick hitters, if you don't mind.
Okay.
There's been some significant trades in the NHL. The latest of which, the first of which, Mikko Rantanen from Colorado to Carolina for Josh Drury, among other pieces. The other piece going the other way, Marty Necas.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on this trade between Colorado and Carolina?
Well, we were talking about it offline between the show, because I couldn't figure this out. Why are they trading away their number one scorer and one of their best players? It's because they can't sign him, and they don't think they can sign him for the amount of money that he wants relative to Nathan MacKinnon. He wanted Nathan MacKinnon money or more. And the Colorado's going to say, listen, we'll make you a high-paid winger, but you're not going to make more than our captain and our superstar. And he's not willing to budge on that. And they figure they can't get him signed. They're not going to risk it. So they trade him. That's what the Jets and Ehlers, like, what is it with Ehlers? That's been so quiet. Is it almost like Nick Ehlers is saying, yeah, I'll sign with you guys. Let's see what happens with the salary cap. I don't need to make Scheifele and Hellebuck money, but if I'm close, I'll make Kyle Connor money. That'll make me happy. Then maybe he stays as a Jet. But the Jets, I haven't heard anything about them signing Ehlers nor trading him away. You're going to let him go into the playoffs, and what happens if we lose in the second round? Then what? You're going to lose Ehlers in free agency for nothing? Maybe. So I don't know. But Rantanen listen, Colorado had to do it. Are they better? I don't know if they're better. They got two pretty good players in Necas and Drury, right? I think it was Jack Drury.
Yeah, and it ends up being Chris Drury's nephew, ironically enough.
So two good players, but they're not Rantanen. But how do you pronounce his name? Is it Necas or
Necas?
Necas, he's kind of been talking like he was looking to maybe go somewhere else than Colorado, or then Carolina signed him to a 3-year deal to keep him. But he's been looking for better ice time, to be more of a superstar, to have more of a prevalent role. He gets that chance now. He could play with MacKinnon. Knock yourself out, Martin. Let's see what you can do. You can earn. See what you can do. But Carolina is they've added a very good player. So they're pretty serious. I think they see a win here to win. So
here's the question I have. Knowing what we know now, there's been no trade deadline. Yeah, I get it. Both teams are probably going to load up. Who are you taking in a playoff series, and in how many games between Carolina and Washington?
Oh, boy. that could easily go 7 games.
For me, the better team is Carolina.
Well, okay, why?
Well, just because they got the best, they got a team that's so close in Aho, Rantanen, goaltending, defense. Yes, they lost Brady Shea. That was the guy that I was thinking about it in Nashville. To me, it wasn't big. They're nasty, but in a one-game scenario, I believe that's going to be a 7-game series. I think Carolina and Mikko Rantanen to be a game breaker along with Sebastian Aho in a one-game scenario over anything but Washington has.
Okay.
But I think that, that's going to be a second-round series, and somebody's going to win that series, and somebody's going to lose that series. And that's what the nature of the bracket kind of sets itself up. Just really quickly, here's my opinion. I know Colorado didn't think they could sign Mikko Rantanen, but to me, Rich, this speaks to a bigger thing about what the Avalanche are thinking. They have overhauled their goaltending this year. They traded both Justin Annunen and the goaltender that's now in San Jose, who the Jets, what's his name there in the series? The Jets.
Kakinen?
Pardon?
Kakinen?
No. He traded to San Jose.
Gorgiev.
Gorgiev, Gorgiev.
Yeah.
To me, when you're overhauling your goaltending tandem, you don't think you design Mikko Rantanen. You're going for this year plus one more year potentially of Mikko Rantanen and Josh Drury. You got Cale Makar. You still got, that McKinnon line running, 30 minutes a night times 82. I think that just screams to me, but Colorado thinks that they're not as deep as they have been in years past.
Yeah.
And you're hoping that Chatteri and others can help. The other trade that's going to happen is a bunch of things here. Vancouver finally moving on from JT Miller, which I think is a big mistake. We'll talk about that in just a minute. JT Miller to the New York Rangers for a bunch of pieces led by Philip Hedl, who's a center. Philip Hedl, a defenseman, and a protected first-round pick. They've since flipped that protected first-round pick to Pittsburgh for Marcus Pettersson and Drew O'Connor, plus a few other pieces going to Pittsburgh. To me, that trade makes 0 sense on the part of Vancouver, even makes less sense on the part of Pittsburgh. Denton Heinen, I think, was the key piece going also to Pittsburgh from Vancouver. Listen, this to me is just very interesting what Vancouver's trying to do. I know they're happy with O'Connor and potentially, the opportunity to re-sign Marcus Pettersson again. I think he's a top 4 defenseman, but until you have him signed under contract, is just that a rental. To me, trading the first-round pick, protected or not, made very little sense after acquiring them. Why does this just feel like it's going around in circles with no endless plan in Vancouver?
Sorry, one more time. What?
Why does it feel like it's going in endless circles with no real plan of any kind of solution?
In Vancouver?
Yeah, in Vancouver. To me, and I'll phrase it this way just before you finish your answer. Okay. To be clear, I think any trade you would have made for JT Miller, you would have lost, given the quality of player and the type of player that JT Miller is. I don't think you're trading JT Miller to JT Miller or JT Miller replacement in a trade. But again, it just feels like Vancouver is in the middle of nowhere with these couple of trades, and the trade of first round pick for a guy that you may or may not be able to re-sign just seems like a big gamble.
Yeah, but okay, sure. But here's the problem. You're jammed, right? Like the guy you got to do something. Your two superstars can't play. It's like when it's like Line A was here. He's talking about he wants 10 million a year. He's a big sniper, blah, 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 blah. The Jets are just saying, we're not going to pay that kind of money to a guy. He's not that consistent. He's great on the power play. He's got a lot of defensive liabilities. He's not a good player up and down the ice. So we're going to put $10 million into a guy just because he can snipe goals on the power play. That's not enough of a reason to get. So they traded him. They got Dubois. They get Dubois in. Same thing. Dubois says, I don't want to sign here. So they got to do something so that you figure, they got jammed and they got some great pieces back from LA. Now you say, well, where's the plan? Where's the plan? Well, sometimes you don't have a plan. You got to react because players will say, I don't want to be here, or I don't like the guy sitting across from me in the dressing room, and you get jammed and your 3-year, 5-year, 7-year vision gets thrown off the rails. What are you going to do? So I think Vancouver had no choice. They had to do something. They did the smart thing. In my mind, Pettersson's younger by about 4 or 5 years. I think he's 26 versus 31. Yeah. I think he's got more upside. I think that JT Miller cloud, I think it's JT Miller's intensity. He was the same way in Tampa Bay, and Tampa Bay got rid of him, and he was a huge piece there, and it was the same thing. He's a guy that's so intense and so like this that he just sometimes he can't ease up on the stick, and his teammates have said he's a great teammate, but outside of the rink, we don't know JT Miller. He just does his own thing. He goes home to his family and he does his own thing. He doesn't want to hang out with the boys and do it. So it's kind of tough. So I think they've done the right thing. They've kept Pettersson. They got a piece back. They got this Philip Cheadle. He's wanted to prove himself as a centerman. He's going to get the chance now. He's going to get a ton of ice time. Good for him. O'Connor's a great defenseman. Pettersson is a great defenseman too. He's a really underrated. I think he's going to I don't know if he's going to play with Hughes or not, but very good defenseman. So,
but here's the thing. So should we maybe look at this whole thing in totality and say JT Miller for Philip Cheadle and Marcus Pettersson? Does that make it look better? Like if you look at the two trades in totality?
Yeah, sure. You could say that, but you can't even say that because you're seeing it from the standpoint of, this was all optional. So I'm going into this was all, this was all just, the kind of looking and shopping around. No, they were jammed. They had to do something. Yeah. And considering they had to do something, that the Rangers were willing to give a first round draft pick and a couple of players that the Canucks are high on that haven't had a chance to prove themselves. Yeah. Like, it's kind of interesting, but like considering the Rangers, they're old. You'd think that they would want to change, like they want to keep their younger players and move out some of their older players. What do they do to shake things up? They bring in another older guy and they get rid of 2 younger players to make themselves even older. Whatever. I'm not in charge at New York, but it seems odd on the surface. But maybe they think they still got a chance to make a run here and get into the playoffs. Where are the Rangers right now? Let me just see here. The Rangers are 10 points out of a playoff spot. Well, maybe 10. Well, maybe not. Maybe 5 to
out of a wild card spot.
They're 5 points out of a wild card spot. So yeah,
that's a long way still.
Yeah, in 30 games, that's a lot of points to make up in 30 games.
Considering everybody's winning at such a ridiculous rate, too, right?
Yeah. So I don't know. It wouldn't be my strategy, but that's fine. I'm not in charge, York. So that's all. Your point. Let me just finish my point. You asked me that.
Yeah.
Is it that Vancouver looks like they don't know what they're doing? They have no plan? No, I think they reacted. They tried to do what they could do with the situation that they got jammed with, and I think they did the best they could. So that's it.
Yeah, hold on. I have a hearing malfunction again. Just trying to swap out earpieces to figure out what works. Yeah, no, it's interesting. So, can you repeat the last part of what you said?
No, you were sort of saying in general, what is Vancouver? Like what are they? What's going on with the plan
Yeah.
there? Da 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 da. I just think it's hard to have a plan when you get jammed with a situation like this. Like, who would have thought that two guys that were on one of the very best teams in the league, like I think Vancouver thought we're gonna get right back there again. Another year, we're back, we're healthy. Quinn Hughes got another year that he's a little bit more mature. We're gonna dominate. We're gonna win out the Pacific, no problem, and be right where we were last year. And they weren't even close. And you figure, like, how is that possible? How did that happen? I don't know. It's weird. And then you get jammed with that. What do? You got to react to it. You got to make up something. You got to recover as much of the assets that you can because you got to move somebody out. And I think they did pretty good, all things considered. So,
yeah, it's interesting.
So,
really quickly, can I ask you? Can I ask you just on the way out what you think of the Ottawa Senators? They've moved to third in the Atlantic. I think that's the most compelling division in all of hockey going down the stretch.
Yeah, a lot of swing there. Very good teams, all competing for a few spots, right? So, yeah, like, I want to see here. Yeah. Yeah, well, Ottawa's been one of the hottest teams in the league. They won 7 of their last 10. I'm just looking here. And both they and Detroit have kind of moved up, and the Tampa Bay and the Bruins have kind of fallen out. So, but I listen, we were waiting all year for Ottawa to do something, right? So is it surprising now that they're in a playoff spot?
No, to me, they're right where they should be relative to the rebuild, in my opinion.
Yeah. And we thought that they were going to be a playoff team. I think both you and I, if I got my numbers here, I picked them as a wild card. Did you pick them? You did not pick them. I did. But anyway.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Also, Linus Omar not ready to make his return yet at Timmy Anton Forsberg tonight against UC Stars. That game drops the puck in about 29 minutes on the Monday Night Amazon game. How do you think the Jets do this week?
Carolina and the Islanders, eh?
Yep.
Carolina, that'll be a good game. Boy, that could go any which way. Whew. I should look. No, Carolina, they don't play tonight, do they? They don't play in Minnesota or something the night before. I don't think so.
I will.
I got to look. No, you don't have to look. I'm just looking right now. I don't think so. I think Ottawa and Nashville is the only game tonight.
Yeah, only game tonight. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know what? I think the Jets are going to go. I just don't know what that game against Carolina. They could play it well and end up losing in overtime. They should beat the Islanders. So I think they go either 1-0-1 or they go 2-0. Why not? Listen, I picked 1-1-1 last week, and they went 3-0. So what do I know? How about you?
Yeah, we're a bunch of nobodies the minute we did off the show because something didn't happen, but didn't throw our predictions completely out the window. Yeah, I think the Jets will go 2-0. I think they're gonna beat Carolina. I think they're gonna beat the Islanders.
Good, I like it.
But okay, we will be back next Monday, regular time, February 10th. We'll preview the Four Nations tournament, and we'll do that all when we get back next Monday. On behalf of Rick Petty, Michael Gill, and half an ear basically for the last hour, I'm going to go upstairs and get this rectified immediately. Thank you for hanging with me anyway. And then we will be back next Monday. Hopefully, ears intact. I've gone through 2 sets of hearing aids in the last hour that don't seem to want to function. So that is life right now. For Rick Petty, Michael Gill saying so long. Have a great week. We'll chat next week. Bye for now.